Oh, this is a fun one. Hi guys, I have a Nikon ZV-E10 right here, a Sony ZV-E10, ZV-E10, and you are looking at a Fujifilm X-S10. X-S10? Let's do a low light test. Now right now I am filming on the Fujifilm X-S10. I have connected it to a Ninja 5 recorder, so I'm doing 10-bit 422. Let me know in the comments below if anything funky happens, any autofocus mishaps. I am testing it out with the Sigma 16mm f1.4 at 1.4, not only to get the most amount of blur back there, but also to really stress test the autofocus, even though I'm not moving around a ton. But oh, what about now? Did it work? Anyway, let's talk about the low light test. So now what I'm going to do is two different tests. I will do a practical test out there in the backyard, and here at Handsome Studios, I will just straight up compare the ISOs. So I really like the backyard test because that makes the most amount of sense to me, because if you're ever using these cameras with absolutely no light, it would have to be if you're out and about in the wilds of society, because otherwise you would put up lights. And if you can, always bring a light. Light is the most important thing when it comes to image quality, so always try to expose your images properly. But sometimes, you know, you're down in the lost tombs looking for Adolf Tutankhamun, you gotta find him, and you don't have a light. Which camera can see in the dark? So how I did is I just did standard profile, the Viltrox 13mm f1.4 fantastic lens. I happen to have one for each of the cameras, which was really great news for that test. I set it at 1.4 to get the maximum amount of light on the sensors, and I set a shutter speed of 1/50, and I shot at 24 frames per second, and then I put them in auto ISO and just let the ISO do what it wanted, and here is the result. Oh wait, let's throw in an iPhone 13 Pro as well, just so that you can see the difference between big sensor cameras and that little sensor on something like the iPhone. Honestly, I was pretty impressed with all three cameras. I think that if you really have to absolutely see in the dead of night with no lights, the Sony is going to do you best because of that 32,000 ISO there. That gives you a little extra artificial light. So now I did think that, which one? The Nikon. I thought the Nikon did hold colors better than the Sony when they were in the really high ISOs. And the Fuji didn't do as well as the Nikon and the Sony, but it was still pretty good. If you looked at relative to the iPhone, the Fuji X-S10 is no slouch in low light. It's just not quite as good as these guys, and I have been pretty impressed with the Nikon Z30 and the ZV-E10. Even when I compare them to full frame cameras in low light, these guys are pretty good. But now I will show you here in Handsome Studios how the ISOs compare. But here's the thing, ISO is just done by the camera manufacturers. It is not like, you know, aperture and shutter speed, which are absolute values and can, you know, be transferred across brands. Different brands have different ISOs, so you can't really compare them one-to-one all of the time. Like, for instance, I had to actually double my shutter speed for the Nikon and the Sony because the Fujifilm is one stop darker at each ISO. So I started at ISO 400 for all three cameras, and the Fuji was at shutter speed of 1/50, and I had to get these guys at a shutter speed of 1/100 if I wanted to keep the lights at the same power and have the same type of exposure. So even though in these tests the Fujifilm might look like it's keeping up, it's really, a lot of that is because it gets an extra stop of light thanks to the fact that the shutter speed is half of what this shutter speed is on these two cameras. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I just wanted to show you that ISO for ISO, how they look. So there you go, same thing. The Sony can see in the dark a little bit better, and I thought the Nikon held on to colors a little bit better. The Fuji held on to colors, I thought, a bit better than the Sony too, but again, that is getting an extra stop of light as a nice little benefit. We don't want to be too hard on the old Fuji here, and we're just comparing ISOs. If you're wondering why I didn't shoot F-Log in the XS10 or HLG3 in the Sony, the fact is HLG3 and F-Log, when they are underexposed, they do very, very poorly. Plus, in F-Log on the Fujifilm, the ISO gets maxed out at 12,800. So not only do you have noisy, grainy footage, it also, you can't go to that extended ISO of 25,600. And the HLG3 on the Sony is not bad, but it does get messier at higher ISOs than if you use just the standard profile. And since I was doing standard profile with both these guys, I did the same thing with the Nikon. I find the Nikon, the flat profile does a tiny bit better in low light, but it wasn't really worth, you know, switching up all the profiles. Let's just do standard, keep it the same. And the fact is, I've tested these things a bunch of times, and the result is roughly more or less the same as what you've seen. So I'm really enjoying testing out the Fuji X-S10. Big thanks to B&H Photo for lending me this guy for a few weeks so that I could compare him to the two cameras that I do own. I do own the Nikon Z30 and the Sony ZV-E10, and the Fujifilm is definitely a fantastic camera. But if you are looking for an ultimate low light APS-C camera for just, you know, at the entry level position, I think you'd be better off with the Sony or the Nikon, just strictly from a very low light perspective. However, bring a light, you don't have to worry about it. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.